Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Ventnor Town Council meeting of on the 14th of March 2022. Do we have apologies for absence, Lisa?
Just from Steph, the Toogood.
Thank you very much, from Steph Toogood. And item number 2, do we have any declarations of interest from the members for tonight's items?
Only that I'm currently renting the water cabins at Bumpers Fields and the equipment in there is what I own.
Okay, noted.
That's not on the agenda, Joe, so I don't think Councillor has it's grateful to advise it's not necessary.
Okay. Then item number 3, the minutes of the previous meetings. If members could take a look through and if there's any queries, please raise them. If there's no comments, then they're taken as read. The next items are minutes of the planning meeting. I'd like to express my thanks to members of the planning committee. 9 items I see. Yeah, well done. Good for you guys. Well done. I know you do a good, thorough job. Item number 4, the finance report. If you could please come up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The last one of this financial year, really, one more to go. Balances at the end 28th of February, 328,715 between the two accounts. And as I've reminded members before, that's inflated in the sense that it contains the remainder of the Public Works Loan Board loan that will be dispersed to the contractor in due course. And the reconciliation of the Town Council's bank accounts up to that date has been successfully completed. Payments during February totaled 71,681, which included 64697 for the Salisbury Gardens account and the second half year payment for the Salisbury Gardens loan of 4,753. The impact of the loan repayment is largely offset by the receipt of the insurance payment of £3,875 for the storm damage that occurred here in July. We're still waiting to agree the claim for the storm damage in October. We paid DN Associates for their work on the new public toilet, the sum of £28,102 for their work up to date in January. And you'll notice that that shows on the sheet of payments you have in 4 separate payments to take account of our £10,000 a day bank transfer limit. Full list of payments is available. Receipts during February came to a total of 16,996, including 9,815 from Salisbury Gardens rents. It also included the payment from the Isle of Wight Council, who had agreed to contribute 50% to the tree works that this council is undertaking in Ventnor Park. The list of payments and receipts against budget lines is attached as usual, and it shows that payments in the 11 months are 3,844 over budget in total, and receipts totaling on 2,971 over budget in the same period. That's the report, Chair. For now, you have the figures attached as usual.
Thank you very much, David. So, members, if you any questions, please do address them to the clerk and responsible financial officer now.
Indeed, both roles are mine.
Yes.
So if I may,
Certainly.
Councillor Lucas raised some queries, a couple of queries with me this morning about the financial report, and that's really helpful because obviously I've got access to the information in full. So if members ever have queries that they'd like to raise any time by email or phone, I'm very happy to receive them before the meeting as well as at the meeting.
Sure. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, well, if we don't have any queries coming from the members, then I will look for a proposer and a seconder, please. Would somebody like to propose? Councillor Cooper, and seconded by Councillor Lucas. And show of hands to accept these documents, and that's everybody. Thank you very much. Item number 5, Ventnor Youth Club. Tony's going to address us in a moment. Oh, Tony and Lauren.
Sorry, I wasn't intending to address. I'm happy to take questions about the report.
Oh, okay, that's absolutely fine. Okay, well, I was intending to introduce it a little bit and then hand over to me. I know you speak so very well, Tony, so...
I'll withdraw my pay rise.
Ventnor Youth Club. So I'm very happy to see this paper in front of us. I'll just run through it quickly. As you can see on the background, the really important note on the background is that the town has been somewhat lacking in a dedicated youth centre ever since we lost use of Victoria Street. As noted on point 1E, the identified fire risk and poor state of the building makes its long-term work for youth work, long-term use for youth work impossible. As you can see in section number 2, the Town Council's current youth officer, Jordan Royal, was appointed on the 21st September 2020. And currently there's a membership in excess of 50, which is really fantastic. I think everybody's very happy to hear that. I'm sure the work will be greatly enhanced by a dedicated centre. As you can see in item paragraph 3, the service is currently being delivered in a range of spaces, including the Green Room, where we are this evening, St Margaret's and Rue Valley. And as you can imagine, a space such as this will present quite a lot of challenges to use, and logistical challenges and the space. So, I'm sure, as everyone's well aware, there's been a great deal of disquiet in the town for a long time, as there is all over the island, about services and things to do for young people. And I think that we'll all be in agreement. Anything that we can continue to do, any way we can bolster the service, will be very welcome. So the purpose of this report is to establish a youth centre in 2 of the porter cabins at Boniface Fields. I'm not overly familiar with the porter cabins, so if there's another member here, I suspect maybe you, Jim, or yourself, Phil, if you could give us a little description of what that facility is as it stands, that'd be much appreciated.
Well, at the moment you've got 2 rooms which Julie uses, haven't you? 2, and then you've got the room on the end, which is a very smaller unit, which is a single story. But the plan is that it's going out for tender, I think, this week. So we come up with a drawing we had some time ago. So we're putting out a tender to do the toilet and the fire prevention work in respect to the toilets. That we're also going to put a small kitchen in the one where the toilet's going, the same as what we've got in the, is it number 3 that we call it on the end? I think we've done number 3 really. We're going for a grant on that, but I'm hoping to get enough of that grant so we can actually also put a door outside ready for the new ramp by and by. And the ramp, I'd like to think we could probably look at a disabled grant for it. So it's a 2-stage job. We are on.
Sorry, can you make it clear to me, would it be a requirement to have these works performed before the youth service could be carried out in that location?
You won't get to use it properly if you don't.
Okay.
The biggest problem is the washrooms, etc., and the toilets. We need a disabled toilet in there as well, and we've got to put some additional fire alarms in. Quite honestly, and we've got the steps just up to the room 3, haven't we, at the moment, which is not suitable for disabled. It would be better if we could wait, quite honestly. I think we're taking a bit of a chance if we go ahead before that, personally. We've got planning permission for it, and we've got building regulations for it, so we're well in front of ourselves. We're just getting some tenders in. And I know Mr. Bartlett, once we've got the tenders in, he's going to go for the grant for it. I would be a lot happier to wait, personally.
Yeah, the staff team are keen to progress it as soon as possible. The grant application will be a awards for all. The turnaround time for that is 12 weeks, and the intention is to start the process of the young people owning the premises as soon as possible. It'll be under Jordan's supervision, so we're quite happy with access to toilets being properly supervised where necessary, because of course they will continue to use the one in the shed, those facilities. So it's just very important that we begin to engage the 53 young people in the development of the project from now, not from 12 weeks' time.
Okay, that's understood.
The advantage we have got there, the place is well lit up, so if you use any particular room, and you've got to use the staircase, which has been remodelled, so it's very safe now. It's all lit up from the unit to the community shed, so you've got safe access. Sorry, Steve, I didn't correct you there. But I've got safe access, yes.
Yeah, I'm just jumping in. We seem to have got into the detail about the development, and I think, Chair, you said overview.
Yes.
So I think I'll do the overview.
Yes, sir.
So, for some members have visited, there are 4 available structures there. The oldest, and this will need to be looked at next year in terms of how can it be brought up to a suitable standard, is where the community shed is. And at the moment that houses the toilets, and the youth service, when they're there, have access to, so they have to come into that building, and usually it's when we're not there. Then directly behind the community shed are one of 3, well, there's 3 newer porta cabins. 2 are double stacked. These are ones that were mentioned. Julie used to occupy the space, and those are the 2 that will now be available for the youth service, as proposed. And at the end, which we've always called P3, porta cabin 3, is a community porta cabin. And I think that's a key thing, really, because Boniface Field, I think, should be seen overall as a site, a community site. Youth service is going there, which is brilliant. And I'll just make the offer again. I do interact with Jordan on occasions when our paths cross. And it's not just Community Shed that's offering help. It's also the Allotment Association, because the youth I know are keen on growing things. And there's 2 small raised beds, 3 at the moment, another one's going in, and we've offered to make that shed secure as well. So I like the idea, and I like the idea of the future, because under item 3, it does say under F, it will enhance the town council's case for renewal of planning permission for the whole site in October next year, because it will then be clearly established for community use. Now, I know we aren't considering now the youth service offer. People will agree it needs to go somewhere ideal, but longer term, as the site develops, I'd like it to be truly interactive at all levels, working on projects together, and anybody who works up there can help support each other. So that's a very broad overview, and it's looking forward, but hopefully that sets it a bit more in context.
Thank you. That's very useful. Thank you. Tony, Jordan, I did offer. So if you
I'm happy just to say a few words. I mean, I think the town council will be rightly proud of its youth service. It's one of those services the Isle of Wight Council used to deliver, used to fund. They used to fund Ventnor Town Council to deliver a youth service, and then they just suddenly stopped funding it. We haven't had a purpose-built youth centre in Ventnor for a long time, and it's very much needed. If you're a young person in town, if it's Monday, is it St Margaret's Hall, or is that on Wednesday? If it's Thursday, it's the Green Room. And it's actually getting used to which event in a different venue each night of the week. I mean, my ambition with the youth service is to provide a comprehensive youth service that's available 5 nights a week. If a child says, oh, I just fancy going to the youth club, they can go to the youth club. And that's like, oh, it's on, oh, is it St Margaret's Hall? Can my parents drop me up there, or is it going to be at Rue Valley Sports Centre, where it's going to be? And Jordan does a tremendous job under the most difficult circumstances, having to carry basketballs around town to Rue Valley Sports Centre. She doesn't grumble about it. I've seen her carry all these basketballs around, and you think that's not really great because it's not the use of a purpose-built youth centre. And it's this idea that young people will have ownership of it. It will be their centre, their exclusive centre. And it is strange over all these years. I think the Town Council was delivering youth services for 10 years. And still people in the town say, why doesn't the Town Council do something for young people? We do, but we do. Here on a Wednesday, there on a Thursday, there once a month, and it gets very confusing. To have a purpose-built youth centre gives us a real opportunity to engage with the wider community, to get parents more involved with the provision of the youth service, and also, as Phil said, it's just such a great opportunity. That site, you've got so many good neighbours, the community shared, the allotment association, you've got St Catherine's School now with an allotment plot, you've got children's services using the site. I mean, the potential there is tremendous for a real hub for the community, but not only parts of the community, but including and inclusive for young people. You've got that amazing all-weather pitch. In the summer, that's going to be fantastic to be used by the young people. We've got a wildlife area at the back. It's an absolutely brilliant space for a youth centre. And we've done really well over the years in getting grant money in to support youth activities. We've had money from the Police and Crime Commissioner, we've had money from the Arts Council, we've had money from Southern Housing. I'm quite confident with a purpose-built youth centre, we can continue to attract funding to increase the provision we offer to young people in the town. So, I mean, I commend it to you, and we do want to be in there. 1st of April, we want the young people to take ownership of it for the first few months until we get the grant money through, to actually use the toilets and the other porta cabin. So if we have children with disabilities, we can get around that. We can perhaps hire a metal ramp to start with, but I don't want it to be empty and unused for a period of 1 month, 2 months. We're not successful in the grant, it might be longer. Let's get the young people in there. Let's the young people of Ventnor ownership of that building and shout about this wonderful opportunity we're creating for our young people in town. And thanks to the Town Council, over a decade, we've been running a youth service, and we've got a real opportunity here to take it to the next level and even stronger youth service and better provision for our young people. Thanks.
All right, yeah, thank you, Tony. Yeah, it's not every day of the week that you get the opportunity to potentially take a space like this. And we know, I mean, all of us around the table here know that spaces such as this are in very, very, very short supply in this town. So, would anybody else like to speak to this?
Just ask a question. Am I right in understanding that it will be used in the evenings only? Is that the proposal?
Predominantly in the evenings, but I could consider it for weekends, and perhaps when we run holiday play schemes, which we did last summer, to use it for holiday play schemes. And if we can find out there particularly young people who want to use the space. So St Catherine's School in the past have expressed an interest in having a youth club. There's the home education group who might want access to a youth club type space. So I think I'd like to keep it as a young person's space and let the young people have a free hand to decorate it, design it, think about how they use the two parts of it, because you've got the opportunity, say, we've always looked for spaces for older girls to get together, girls about 14, 15, who just want to sit together and chat. They don't want to sit with the youngsters doing craft activities, so you've got the opportunity there for two spaces to be managed by professional youth workers and done in a complementary way. So I think that's a real opportunity. So yes, I mean it would be.
I think that'd be brilliant longer term. Because I was thinking possibility of running workshops even. Don't want it to be so structured that it's no longer a youth centre, but if youngsters come up with an idea they'd like to learn this skill and that skill, then there could be people available who can present that skill. It's just trying to maximise its use is what I was thinking. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. Steve, please.
Tony, thanks for that. My first port of call and really consideration is that I think it's absolutely a fantastic initiative. Support it fully. One question I have is, you mentioned the 1st of April. I would have no objections as long as you can provide assurances that all risk assessments, all safe working systems of operations and insurance are in place by then. If you give me that assurance.
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, absolutely. Sorry, Jordan, do you want to add anything?
No, I think it would be good to get the children starting to have a look around there, because we're starting up the allotment club soon, so they'll be up there gardening, and it's just good. That's in a lot smaller groups because it's only me working with them at the moment, so it will just give an opportunity for a couple, well, like 8 children at a time to see the space and the area. Just important for them to have a space and a place for themselves.
Okay. If no one else likes to comment, then we'll look to the recommendation. The recommendation is for the town council. The town council is recommended to agree the use of the double-decker porta cabins in Boniface Fields as the town's new dedicated Ventnor youth centre. Do I have a proposer? And a seconder proposed by Mr Watkins and seconded by Councillor Jeffreys. Show of hands, please. Okay, that's everybody. Super, that's a really significant big chunk of Ventnor Town Council's operations that are going to come in line there. There you go. Ready now. Thank you. Thanks very much for your continued work. We know it's been tough at times. Thank you. Item number 6, beach safety. So, as everybody is aware, the Town Council has resolved to approve the temporary employment of 2 beach safety workers for the period from the 1st of June until the end of September. Appointments have been made, I'm pleased to report, so thanks very much for those of you that took part in that process. But we are still required to confirm these appointments. Would anybody like to speak to this item?
Well, I was on the interview panel just for South of Brian. We've got 2 amazing people. They've got a lot of experience behind them. Very confident. They've worked on the beach. They know what they're doing. Basically, they hit the ground running.
Good. That's really good to know.
The two, they're just. I think they're perfect. They've got a lovely attitude. A lot of experience, really. So it shows why it's been there.
Okay. You chose wisely.
We chose wisely. No, 2 very good people, actually. I think they do great. And also, one's been a young lady, which also helps when you've got children, injuries and stuff. Really. I think that's quite good. Sorry, Ian, I interrupted.
I'll say it's really good news, I mean, and well done for doing it. The date in the report can't be right, though. It's only today.
14th of March.
Oh, yes. The interviews were not held today, were they? No. Okay.
No, it should be extremely quick. And you sent us a report last week as well. But it's good news that because we expected some difficulty because of the beyond the school holidays or student holidays. So it's good news that we've got people willing to do it.
It is good, and I mean, as you'll know, as I've spoken about this before, I believe this could be a real asset to the town, which will serve visitors, residents, and businesses alike. So, all good news, yes. But we do need to recommend to confirm these appointments. Do I have a proposer and a second? Proposed by James and seconded by Councillor Lucas. So, show of hands, please. And that's everyone. Okay, item number 7, the Isle of Wight Association of Local Councils. So if I'm not mistaken, which I might be, if I'm not mistaken, this has come into conversation again primarily because I was invited by Diana Conyers from the chair of IWAL to have this discussion with other members. Then after circulation of a couple of emails, it seemed very appropriate that that the item comes to the full council for discussion. I have a sense that there's quite a positive feeling towards this, but I think it's very important we also consider again the reasons why the council made the decision that it did in 2017, which some of you around this table will recall. I think if you take a look at item 6A within the briefing notes, item 6A in particular in the briefing notes, the Town Council's decision of 2017 to move to HALP was based on concerns around IWAP's inevitably small size and consequential limited resources, unsatisfactory decision-making structure and unwillingness to consider development of it. The absence of policy development and slow response times due to the reliance on now. It's my understanding that some of those points have been addressed. It's my understanding that IWAP has modernised and has a new team there. However, some of that will still certainly hold water. Point B, a further consideration was the increasing move of essential services from the island to Hampshire. That's already applied to children's services, police and fire services, now being extended to the clinical commissioning group, and the incorporation of it and related health services into the Hampshire and Isle of Wight integrated care service. As David's pointed out in the briefing note in part C, given that point, the rationale for why the decision was made in 2017 is actually stronger now than it was then. However, to balance that, I think I have the feeling that councillors will speak in favour of this, but I do certainly think that that aspect does warrant airing once again. Would any members like to speak to this? Brian?
I've been on the council quite a while, and I remember many meetings where the mayor in your position reported his meetings with IWOC with total frustration in that they were badly managed, they had no great structure, and they weren't able to prove that they were able to influence the Isle of Wight Council in any way because of their sort of poor decision-making process. And so, having seen what IWOC represent themselves as now, it's completely different. And I think that's the important thing, is they're a different organisation. And when I see the number of people who are still with IWOC on the island, they would represent a very powerful force to a new administration. I would suggest that the Alliance group are probably more likely to consider recommendations from IWOC than the previous administration was. So there's two big factors there. They're a different organisation and they're reporting to a different organisation, and they're better structured now. When I saw their recent report, it was very thorough, and it indicates that they are very well managed now. So I think it's a different situation. I don't think we ought not to be considering 2017 and 2022 in the same light. It's a different organisation. So I would be supporting moving back to IWOC without any sort of not a face really, because it's a different organisation.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I can probably add a little bit to that. I used to go to late Harry Rees, and I back up Brian says in those days it was a bit of a mess. There's a lot of name dropping and people just like to talk about the rubbish. But I would like to support it, go back into it personally.
Steve?
I would like to support it as well, because to me it just makes sense that we're an island town, and if we're not in it, how can we actually influence it for the good? What I would like to ask is what is the period of membership? Is it annually? And how can you affect change? Because quite clearly in 2017 you made that decision very strategically, which I totally can see why you made that decision, and that has to be considered. But what is it? What would be our part in shaping how this particular group is governed, so that we can actually get the best out of it for the town council?
The changeover is very straightforward. I inform health that we won't be paying their membership fee from the 1st of April, and inform IWOC that we will pay those instead. So that's straightforward. If you were asking how the town council influences IWOC, I wish you well.
Okay, so there's not a prescribed method.
Well, you have a member appointed to represent the town council, and you are one of the 33, of the 26.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree with the three members that have spoken already. I think the critique of IWOC back in 2017 was valid, and it was reasonable for us to suggest that if IWOC was willing to sort of come under the Hulk umbrella, it would actually be stronger all round. But we're not going to achieve that by sitting out of it. After 5 years, we're no nearer to getting that done than we were than we were originally. And therefore the question is whether we're making things better or worse by staying out of it. And I would have thought if the argument is that they're underfunded and they're not very effective, we'd actually be making it better by joining rather than sitting on the sidelines.
Okay.
So I agree with Brian and Steve and Jim.
Thank you. And yeah, I see you've referred to the very last paragraph in David's briefing notes, the possibility that IWAL could join HALC and become a district.
Yeah, I mean, you're only going to get that if sort of half the island's councils left and joined HALC. And if that had happened, we might be in a different ball game. But we just five, I think it is, five of us sitting out of it. It's not going to happen, is it, after 5 years?
And they are, it does say in here, they are all smaller councils, aren't they? If I'm not mistaken.
And they're probably more motivated by saving the money than they are by actually wanting to change facts. I would imagine.
Although they pay the same amount to,
Well,
with the exception of Shankly, who belong to neither.
okay, well, yeah, I'll throw my accusation at Shenton.
I suppose one way of actually controlling the net effect of IWALC is to become a very powerful member on the committee. I mean, if we're just sitting watching it all happen, we can't really influence it. So it is a burden on us really to get into a powerful position on that group, whereby we're steering what it does and its policies and its strategies and things. And I think previously it wasn't possible to do that. It was being run in a very negative way, whereas I think it's a bit more democratic now. So.
Yes, well, I mean, there's certainly the sense that I have when you ask about how it could be steered, Steve, is by democracy and the power of persuasion. And if this council rejoins and attends those executive meetings, then it'll be the power of persuasion that wins over. I don't necessarily think we should approach IWAL with the intent of going in and changing things straight away. Let's have a look first. But yeah.
But on issues like car parking or even the RECA, though, it's another route into the Isle of Wight Council.
Yeah. Okay, we'll move to the recommendation. I do need somebody to make a proposal.
I propose that we accept this and rejoining IWALC.
Yeah, I'm happy to say.
Okay, and I have a proposal with Brian and seconded by Ian. A show of hands, please. Okay, thank you very much. Yes, sorry. As well, I hope you will notice my two-line email earlier on. We need to appoint a representative, so I'll be looking for a proposer and seconder for both a representative and a deputy.
I said that I was interested, but I'll stand aside for anyone who's got a burning ambition to do that.
But can you propose yourself, or will we be looking for somebody to propose?
I'll propose, Steve.
Proposed by John. And do we have a seconder? And Mark seconded for it. So, show of hands if we. So. And a deputy for those times you're away, Steve.
I'll be a deputy. I'll propose myself as a deputy.
I'll propose Julie.
Okay. Ian has proposed Julie. If you have a seconder for Julie, and Steve was. So, show of hands, please. So. Okay, thanks for the reminder. Item number 8, glyphosate use.
Yes.
Again, members that have been on the council for a long time will know that I came to this council around about 3 years ago with a very similar item. I ran out of steam. I was largely undone by the complexity of dealing with island roads and the fact that this town council was clearly going to be unable to impose its will on island roads. As you are all probably aware, in 2020, Island Roads apparently made a unilateral decision to stop using glyphosate, or to reduce dramatically the use of glyphosate around the Isle of Wight. which I thought was very surprising and a great effort on their behalf. Just 2 years later, they have decided to reintroduce, or I say 2 years, I think the press release was at the end of 2020, and they've had one season without the use of glyphosate. And here we are in the spring, they've announced that they're going to start using that chemical again. I wasn't surprised at all to see that change of heart. It's the generally accepted cost difference if you're having a like-for-like treatment between using glyphosate and doing hand treatments is 8 times the cost. That's if you're aiming for a like-for-like treatment by hand. I think looking into the future, as and when glyphosate is taken out of action, which I'm quite sure it will be across the country one day, as it has been in several European countries, I think what we will all have to get used to is more weeds, because like for like is an unrealistic scenario. As you're all aware, we received an email today from Phil Jordan, who is the Isle of Wight Council member who has responsibility for this. He's raised with us the main issue, that is the contractual difficulties of Island Roads and Isle of Wight Council's relationship, and how difficult it will be for them to meet their obligations without using glyphosate. I think Phil has mentioned within his email about the public expectations, and I think we have to be mindful of what we say here and what we resolve to do here, and how that's potentially going to be carried through, and if it can ever come to fruition. Those conversations still need to go on. Mark, would you like to speak to this?
Before you do, if I may, just to clarify for members, I don't believe that the Town Council is bound by the PFI contractual restraints, because our contract with Dominic Connor is direct. That wouldn't apply to Ventnor Park, where obviously we're paying the Isle of Wight Council for their contract with John O'Connor, but it would apply, or could be argued to apply, to the 18 areas that our grounds maintenance currently covers. So I don't think that those contractual restraints need to apply.
Yeah, thank you, David. Yeah, I just wanted to make it completely clear that before us we do have 2 situations really. One of them is how we deal with our areas, which most notably include, the Cascade and Ventnor Park.
I don't think it's used in the park.
Sorry?
Actually, inside the park, I don't think it's used, is it?
I don't think it does.
It's certainly to come along and spray the road and all the trees.
Yeah, but what I mean is we're not employing that contractor for that operation, so we will be caught, I think, by the PFI limitations of the Isle of Wight Council's decision. Whereas with the remainder of the areas, we contract directly with John O'Connor. So we will be free, for example, if that was the decision, not to tell the contractor not to use it.
That's in the park as well, isn't it? Because that is not a contract between the Isle of Wight Council and Island Roads, but it's one with O'Connor's. And I don't think O'Connor's is under the same obligation to only use glyphosate, is he?
Yeah, my point is I don't think it's used in the park, so I think exactly.
Yeah, I mean, it's very limited use, but I think Isle of Wight and O'Connor's contract is different from the PFI one, certainly. So all the areas that we're concerned about, apart from the roads, I think we're in control of.
Okay, so to be absolutely clear, sorry Mark, I'll bring in this to be absolutely clear, there is 2 discussions here. One is the treatment of the Ventnor Town Council areas, and the other is how we, if we should express an opinion onto the Isle of Wight Council on this subject. Mark, as you know, I did speak to Jim earlier, and we have spoken about it, about the Ventnor Town Council areas.
Yeah.
So I'll let you carry on, and then we'll bring.
Yeah, I'll say a little bit about the obviously Island Roads area. And then Greenfield Jordan's actually replied. He said it's going to be sympathetic, especially in Ventnor, where the wall lizards are. I have a slight concern with that because obviously the range of the wall lizards has expanded. So if they're spraying, where will they know where the wall lizards are, for instance? How do you ascertain? You can walk around one day and you won't see a lizard, the next day you'll see loads of them. So I think we have to have clarification of where they're going to be spraying and when they're going to be spraying. That's my first point on that one, really. Obviously, he had said he's going to be sympathetic about it, but I think we need to get a lot more clarification on that, and obviously liaise with them. On the Ventnor Town Council part, obviously it was first mentioned to me that glyphosate isn't used by any of our contractors, but since I have been told that maybe it is occasionally used, but and I know Jim's done a lot of work on this area using alternative solutions, and I'd like to bring him in now.
Well, I'll tell you a bit about that. Steph's main one has been doing work with her. She's been talking to the manufacturers of a friendly weed killer. We've trialled it at North Street Playground, which has been very successful. We also trialled it down the seafront near Paddington, because that's close to the sea, so we wanted to know if the sea air and mist affected it, but it didn't. It worked really well. So the two areas we tried, it's been really, really successful. And I think before we can make any more discussion, I'd really like to wait till Steph's back, because she can work and stand on costings and time, etc. I mean, to me, to actually spray it takes no longer. It's a spray as simple as that, really. At one stage, we found it would probably want 2 sprays, but with our experiments and our trials, we found that not to be really. So, I'm not trying to put off, but Steph's the best one to basically give the correct information we want, etc., and costings and areas, etc. But what we have found, it's been really good. Very good.
Yeah, it's good news.
John, please.
Thank you, Chair. Going back to the lizards, I don't know that it's just a concern that the lizards get sprayed. The insects get sprayed. The lizards predate on the insects, and once it gets into the food chain, they ingest it and then they become infected, and happens and then kills them. So I think we need to be aware that it's not directly affecting the lizards. It's a byproduct of the spraying will affect the lizards.
Brian?
I dare say we've all seen these little quad bikes whizzing round, and my view is that their spraying is indiscriminate. I think they just whiz along, probably on their smartphones or something, and then they just whiz along and just spray the whole lot. They see a vague section of green and they go spray it. And I think there's just not enough selective spraying. And I think if they stay with glyphosate, they ought to be held up really for being lacking in care in terms of what they spray. I mean, I've had friends who've got flowers near their wall and they've sprayed. I mean, it's quite clearly that the guy on the quad bike doesn't recognise a marigold from a weed, you know. So, it's I think if they have to stay with glyphosate, they ought to be held to account for being indiscriminate in the way they apply it. That's different from the lizard.
The impression that I'm under is that it is stipulated that they should do target spraying. That's the impression that I'm under. However, I think anecdotally we're all aware of that the guys jump on the bikes, often on the pavement as well, and whiz down and spray. So. Steve?
Well, I asked the question about was any impact assessment done, and Phil, yes, he did get back to me and says that he's not aware that he wasn't around pre-PFI contract. And the reason I bring that up because it's, you know, both Mark and John have touched on it. It's not just the litters; it's a whole, you know, biodiversity of the town and what that potential negative effect it has on that insect life, etc., etc. So I don't see why there wasn't an impact assessment done. Usually in public funded ventures, there's an impact assessment that's absolutely been required for the last 20 years. So I would like to see what the impact is, particularly if there's any negative effects, which we know that potentially there is. And I think that even if we haven't got the power to change that decision making on lands that we haven't got control or authority over, that we should be asking for that, for the findings of that. It's just basically to support what Mark is actually saying, is we need more detail and more information.
Yes, I agree. I mean, I've no doubt that there's reams and reams of discussion on this subject, with a lot of lawyers producing a lot more discussion on this subject, because, as you're well aware, it's been very, very contentious for a long time. So these risk assessments, they must exist. So I think they possibly exist in Whitehall, resulting in a BS standard. You know. A British standard.
Yeah.
I mean, just quickly, I mean, I've seen it being done down Park Avenue, and walking the dog, and they are indiscriminate. They just go down and drench every single tree down there, and obviously, you know, dogs like the bottom of trees for various reasons, and it's dangerous to pets as well as other wildlife. I think the strongest argument we have is the one Jim raised, because if the cabinet member is hiding behind, you know, we have to do this to meet the obligations of getting rid of weeds, if we can demonstrate that it's possible to do that without this chemical, then that takes his argument away, doesn't it?
It does take his argument away. However, we have to be mindful that the scope that we would be working with our areas and the scope that they are working with, it's several orders of magnitude greater, isn't it? But yeah,
We don't think our chemical would work on our alternative would work on a large scale, is it?
Well, that would have to be demonstrated, wouldn't it? I think we all know if the alternatives were simple, then they would have been taken already. I mean, there is a genuine problem. We have to be fairly sympathetic that there is a genuine problem there. So we're looking for ways to resolve this. Coming into the paper. Thank you, Mark, for this paper. On the second slide, we have two questions. Does VTC support the use of glyphosate weed killer in Ventnor? And should we support a blanket ban within Ventnor and the surrounding areas?
The first one, yes, we do consider it to be dangerous, and the second one is more difficult because we haven't got costings of, we haven't got unlimited funds to provide an alternative which gives the same effect. So we've got to know what's affecting the budget, for instance. It's a shame to have to consider money back on this, but everything's got its price, hasn't it? The other thing is, do we accept more weeds? Are we prepared to live with something which isn't sort of as tidy as it was previously?
So the situation that we're in is whether or not we can live with more weeds is kind of out of our hands, and it would appear to be out of the Isle of Wight Council hands, and it appears to be out of Island Road's hands, and it would seem to be somewhere in this 2,000-page document. It seems to be in there, which is the tail that's wagging, you know, all the other dogs. Are we prepared to live with more weeds within our spaces? I mean, that question can be asked.
I'll come in there if you don't mind, please. I think if we start saying we live with more weeds, the pavement's going to be not passable, because some of the weeds they grow up 3 or 4 foot high. You know, I think we're leaving ourselves wide open with great respect. If we said that personally, I see the whole thing being left alone. They're going to say, "You said you like weeds, you got them."
Yeah. Well, I don't think that's even a matter of discussion for us, really. because we don't have any power over that, and it would seemingly they don't have any power. However, that doesn't mean to say that we cannot make a statement if we wish to make that statement.
Yeah, I think the statement needs to be made. I mean, this is harking back to what 5 years ago that I remember this from, where we did very much the same thing, and then Highland Roads did what they went on and did what they wanted to do. If my memory serves me correctly, but I think we really should be making the statement of where what we think should be happening. I think it might be the practicalities might be difficult to follow through, but I think it's very fair that we make the statement of where we would like to be.
Something else that I'd be interested in is if there's any, I don't think there is, but if there's any possibility of partnership working between us and the Isle of Wight Council, and as Mark mentioned, volunteers looking after certain areas. I think I'd be very surprised if the Island Roads go for that, but it might be something that we want to investigate, certainly for some of the areas that we're aware of that are particularly heavily populated with the lizards. Not that the lizards are the only concern. John?
Well, I think Freshwater have got the right idea. The contractors have requested their contractors to ban it completely, and have requested a blanket ban. I don't see why we couldn't do the same. And if you want partnership working, then we could work, I suppose, with Freshwater and any other councils that are feeling the same way about this, to try and get this issue out into the wider public agenda.
I think thanks to the work of Councillor Jeffries, it's in the public agenda. Yeah, please, sir.
Yeah, just to back up the recent comments, I agree completely. And the strength we have in Ventnor is we've got evidence of an alternative that works.
Yes.
The important thing with an argument is you can back it up with something that's positive, it's worked, strong the argument, and I agree. I don't think we've had discussions with Freshwater yet, but certainly their approach seems a similar mind. Certainly worth contacting them, I think, as part of the greater discussion. And I'm approached not just because of what's on the website recently, but members of the Allotment Association naturally are very keen about banning the use of glyphosate or restricting the use of glyphosate. And pet owners, dog walkers in particular, very often the dogs are at the level, aren't they, completely where the spraying's gone, if it's indiscriminate. So it's not just people growing things, people with pets be concerned. We've got evidence that an alternative works, and let's collaborate more with Freshwater to strengthen the argument.
Just ask, Mark, are you going to present your petition to the Isle of Wight Council?
I already have.
You have?
Yeah, they're following it, so yeah, they know.
But you actually formally submitted it, but yeah.
Just to say that a motion similar to this is going through on Sandown on next Monday, so they're actually supporting it as well. Whether they support it or not at the meeting, I don't know, but a motion is going through. So.
Okay, Mark, if I may make a suggestion. So as Jim has told us, Steph's done a lot of work directly with the contractor, and it is positive. They are positive results. So so don't worry. But my preference with regards to the Ventnor Town Council spaces is that we receive a report from Steph at next month's meeting, if that's okay.
Yeah.
And then with regards to another statement, then you're very, very free to make a proposal at this meeting if you still wish to make a suitable statement from this council to the Isle of Wight Council. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Words. Would you like to use these words, or does somebody have, in light of the discussion that we've had, what would you?
Right. Okay.
Sorry to put you so heavily on the spot here, but
yeah.
if we're going to make a submission to, I mean, alternatively, we can develop a submission to make to the Isle of Wight Council, and we could also bring that back next month.
Yeah, maybe if we could have a collective submission, and everyone puts their views in, what they think, and we can put something through that way. Better idea, and everyone has a say on it, and we can actually draft something rather than sort of like
Rather than
just put my
come up with,
across,
yeah.
and then everybody has their viewpoint, and we can come to a collective sort of like letter to actually write to them.
Well, this recommendation is to consider the proposal, which I think we've done very thoroughly, but we haven't reached an absolute conclusion, have we? One of the things that I think we need to be done is to get O'Connor's to come up with a revised price to include the alternative, which has proved to be okay.
So,
because we, I think that's a missing factor in any decisions we make.
Well, Chair, it says here that I'm quoting, Freshwater Parish Council passed a motion to ban the use of glyphosate by the contractors and requested a blanket ban on Monday, 1st of March. I mean, does it need to be any more complex than that?
it doesn't need to be. No, it doesn't need to be. I mean, you're very welcome to propose that this council takes that step, or we go back until April. We receive the report from Steph.
Yeah, we're not discussing. We don't need to discuss if we're passing the motion what it would be that we would replace glyphosate with. We're just proposing a ban on it.
I mean, you can urge either by council to look at
exactly.
more environmental friendly alternatives.
Exactly.
We don't have to specify. It's not for us to solve the problem.
No, but we can talk about us, and we're banning it for the things that we operate. But we can urge the Island Council to do the same, much in the way that Freshwater have, and possibly Sandown and others.
But I believe the invitation is still there, if you like, to come up with a couple of sentences now, or to have something more in depth for April.
I think what Councillor Watkins just described is what Mark Jeffries has put in the recommendation himself, which reads, write to the Isle of Wight Council on Iron Roads requesting a blanket ban on glyphosate weed killers, specifically in Ventnor and more generally across the island. That was Mark's original.
Yes, that's right. And that doesn't
go into any fine detail, do we, at this point?
No.
Okay, then we look for a proposal for. Oh, fingers went up very quickly. Okay, we have a proposal of Councillor Jeffries and seconded by Councillor.
Can you read what that was said? Can you read what that revised recommendation is?
It's the first one, it's the top of the page.
It's the first 3 lines on the attached sheet.
Well, it's just the first two, the first 3 lines.
Yeah, sorry, Mark. I was looking more towards the bottom where you had the question mark. But it's okay. And then.
And also the 4th line, I could suggest, Chair, if I may, propose that we make sure our contractors do not use glyphosate.
I wouldn't support that at this stage because we don't know what the implications are.
I think that's, it's
So-
dangerous to commit to expense without knowing what the cost is.
But then we look ridiculous if we do that.
Well, we're asking them to ban it, but we're not going to
That's
do
what I
it
mean.
ourselves.
If we need more information, we need to wait. We look absolutely stupid.
Well, the information will be coming next month.
Yeah, when we're advocating our White Council does something and saying, well, we can't do it ourselves because we haven't got the information, it's hopeless.
Right, can you just add the first 3 lines then, and we will further consider cost implications when more information is available?
No,
Okay, we have.
I'm just trying to add that in, but not in.
Well, if I was O'Connor's, I'd charge you 10,000 extra for that. Once you've made your decision.
As I said quite early on, we are really looking at two separate issues here, which is our address to the Isle of Wight Council and what we do with our own spaces. So I think we have a proposal, and we haven't actually voted on that yet. But we had a proposal from Mark and seconded by John to propose that the BTC writes Isle of Wight Council. Can you have a show of hands, please, on that? Thank you very much.
On the roads.
Yes, yes. and now we are discussing the proposal that we make sure that our contracts do not use glyphosate. And we propose and second and vote on that now, or we hold on for 1 month and receive the report from Steph.
Please let's wait. We need to know what the cost is.
Yeah. I mean,
we've
that
set
must
the
have
budget for next year already, and I'm not saying the council can't do it, but it needs to know what it's doing. So that decision could wait.
It's on the table. We're not going to let it fall down, but I feel.
No, I'm just giving members the opportunity.
It's not the strongest of positions to be in, though, is it? Because we're asking the Isle of Wight Council to do something that's
They don't,
principle.
they don't know that we're taking a different view.
Mr. Watson.
I mean, if we're asking them to do it on a matter of damage to the environment, we're not prepared to do the same ourselves.
No, I haven't said that. You know, we're just making it a secondary decision.
Okay. Well, we did pass the motion on the substantive part of that. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. If that's okay, I'll move on to the planning committee appointment. Number 9. Okay, planning committee terms of reference require has 5 or more members appointed by town council, and the quorum for the meeting will be 3. It currently does not have. It does have the required minimum of 5 members, but occasional declarations of interest and avoidable absences can leave the meetings inchorus. Councillor Mark Jeffries has expressed an interest in joining the committee. As a legal committee, then this does have to come to the full council. It does require a proposer, a seconder, and a show of hands.
Can I just add that in as chair?
Sure.
If I just explain the background on the meeting of the 25th, we had 5 planning applications. On the last one, we were core 8 for the meeting, 4 out of 5 were there. But because of expressions of interest, there were only 2 who could vote, so we became in core 8, and then we had to meet again the week following, and just to consider that one particular planning application. And this could well happen again in the future. So that's the background and how we discovered the inadequacy, potential inadequacy of meetings. So sorry to jump in there, but I'll sort of give a bit of background.
Thank you very much.
Proposer, seconder, sorry, Chair.
Yes, we're looking for a proposer and seconder. What would you like? We can propose one. Thank you, Steve. And seconded by the chair of the planning committee. Show of hands. Thank you all very much.
Can I make sure, Chair, that Ian done a really good document on the planning, I'm sure Mark gets it. Please, remember you've done a good document, Ian, didn't you, on the planning?
See for that.
Yeah.
Item number 10, the new website, which I think we're all very happy to know is progressing very well. Ian, would you be so kind as to provide an update?
I can do that. I'm sure Nigel will have something to add, but I'll just summarise where we are for members. I hope members have had the chance to look at the new development website, which isn't a public website, but you can access it on the link that I've sent you by email. We are making steady progress, and Nigel is doing good work putting everything together. We said at the last meeting that we aim to launch mid to late March. I think we're now looking for the council to decide to launch at the end of this month, 31st of March. And when we launch, we will have all of the statutory content about the council and its meetings and our committees and how the council works, and hopefully some of the content about the town. But there will be a lot of work still to do. And I think, as we hinted at the last meeting, our plan will be to continue adding to the site during the spring and summer after it's been launched. But the key thing is to replace our current website, which is not satisfactory and not legally compliant, with a new one as soon as we can. And as soon as we can is, by our judgment, at the end of this month. So the first decision we're asking the council to make today is just to confirm that it wishes to launch a new website at the end of the month. And I would suggest we add to that a delegation to the town clerk in consultation with the working party, the ability to adjust the date by a week or so, by up to a week if it's necessary for operational reasons. If we don't launch by a week after the end of the month, we might as well come back to the next council meeting and review where we are. So that's the first thing. We need to decide the domain and address of the website, and the working party's recommendation is that we go with the .gov.uk address, which will bring a significant advantage to us on Google for searches on Ventnor, because .gov.uk sites are treated as authoritative by the search engine, and we have a choice between Ventnor Town Council.gov.uk or Ventnor TC.gov.uk, and the working party's view this morning was we go with Ventnor Town Council.gov.uk, as that would be what most people would guess it was likely to be. We would also change our emails to .gov.uk, but subject to any update that Nigel has, our belief is that the existing email addresses will be maintained and will continue to work. So essentially, they'd be merged, and the tech people would merge it underneath so that whichever one was used, the emails would arrive and people wouldn't lose their inboxes and their outboxes and all their records of emails. But gradually, we would move over to VentnorTownCouncil.gov.uk email addresses, which is, I think, the most common option on both the island and nationally, certainly among town councils. Our current situation with .org, I think, is very unusual. So that's the second decision that we're asking members to take. The third decision relates to the colours of the website. It's probably best to just for Nigel to give an update before we come back to that. The only other things I wanted to mention was we are short of photographs, good photographs of the town, because as you can imagine, the website's got a lot of buttons, and each button takes you to more buttons and more pages, so we actually need quite a lot of good photographs. So if anyone has any photographs, and knows of anyone who has good photographs, Nigel will be very pleased to receive them. I would encourage you all, I think as I said at the email at the weekend, encourage you all to look at the new site over the next 2 or 3 weeks. Certainly check your own details before they're published, check you're happy with what's there. And if you've got the time, poke about and let us know if you find anything, any suggestions or anything you think needs changing or correcting. I think from me that's it. Nigel, is there anything you?
Yeah, I think Ian's actually put it in a nutshell really. We've made a lot of progress in the last couple of weeks, and we've fleshed out the site now, and it's now getting down to the nitty-gritty of checking the content. So even though the photographs all look the same, that's just so that people realise there is a photograph that goes with that one, and we will get round to changing all of those before the site goes live. The statutory requirement stuff is being mostly checked now, and that will be ready prior to anything else. There is some other information which will need checking, which will be your own personal information. If you want to have had some people say they want some of the wording changed, updated, or their picture updated. Please just send me that, and I will be doing the council page because I'm going to do the important stuff first. The niceties, like Ian said, we'll add in. We can put those in as and when they're ready to go in. It would be nice though to sort of get most of the work done before we go live, so that it looks like it should look. But there is some proofreading to be done of certain information around the town, because some of that information has changed. It's on the site now, but please don't take that as the finished article, because it's just on there, so you know what's going to be on there, and then we'll check numbers of population, all these sort of things, the maps that are correct. That's what's being done now. But as Ian said, I think with the colours, I personally wasn't aware of how critical the colours are for accessibility, and it's to do with tone and contrast. Certain colours don't work with other colours for people with vision impairment or dyslexia or autism. So all these things are factored into a way of checking these colours together. So at the moment the site is taken from our logo, which is the dark blue and the green. I spoke to the developers today. There are 2 softer tones that they are looking at the moment, but I'm not overly hopeful that they're going to. They put it into a program, they get a score, and you have to be above this level to fulfil requirements. So I haven't got that information in hand now, but I think at the moment we're probably heading for the blue and the green. But again, please, by all means, go onto the site, look at the colours, make any suggestions. And as Ian said, the next 2 or 3 weeks we'll see a lot more progress because the site is relatively built. It's now pretty interesting for me. Apart from that, I don't think we've got anything else to add.
All right, thank you, Nigel. So for clarification, when there's new content to be added now, that will all come from yourself.
Yes.
You are the webmaster now.
Yes, most of the stuff will come from us now. And any of the information that's on there is now, which I'm checking to make sure it's factually correct. And it's all in the style, but now it's just the factual side of it. And documents will be uploaded with the 6-year cut-off, and make sure that we've got so many meeting minutes on there. The meetings will go back. It's that kind of information which is on there, but we're just making sure it's
Okay, super. Thank you very much. Ian, would you like to anything to add?
If any members got any issues or questions, or
So I mean, 2 points: .gov.uk, Ventnor Town Council, or Ventnor TC, and then the date.
yeah, on the colours, I think in terms of the proposals, then the first proposal is to confirm that we're happy to launch the site at the end of the month, delegate to the town clerk in consultation with the working group the ability to delay that by up to a week if necessary. The second recommendation would be to essentially authorise the town clerk to apply for the Ventnor Town Council.gov.uk domain address. And we know it will be available because now we're the only people legally allowed to use it. And then the third recommendation would be that members confirm they're happy with the colours, and again I think delegate to the town clerk the ability to review them if other options become available.
Sure, and so sorry, to clarify, with regards to the colours, that they're going to check at Zonky to make sure that they're in accordance with the accessibility.
The accessibility requirements, but it's in plain English, we've got the dark green and the dark blue, and they both have to look clear if they've got dark green or dark blue text on a white background, or if you've got white text on a dark blue or dark green background, or if the dark blue and the dark green are adjacent to each other. And because of that, it makes it quite difficult to come up with other options. Because when we started, we talked about having a light blue and a dark blue. The problem is obviously the dark blue text and the light blue won't be legible, and you end up with colours that don't sit next to each other. And again, we were quite keen to look at the grey, obviously grey and blue as being a bit more sophisticated. But the regulations that we're required to meet as a government council website are quite strict.
Okay, so as Ian's very well outlined, there's 3 points to the recommendation. Would anybody like to make any comments on this? So in that case, we're looking for a proposer and a seconder to have the dates as outlined by Ian for ventnortowncouncil.gov.uk and for the colour scheme to proceed as described.
Well, I'm happy to propose this. Essentially, I've done so.
I'll second.
Show of hands, please.
Again, just a reminder about the photos. It would be very useful to have more photos.
And we've got enough sunsets, haven't we?
Yeah, we do have more sunsets.
Anybody with a camera?
Thank you. Thank you, Ian. Thank you for your continued work on that topic. Thanks very much, Nigel. I hope it's fun in some way. Item number 11, Time and Tide Bell project. Bill, over to you, please.
Yes, it's just a report, and it summarises the meeting that we held here in the Green Room on the 17th of February. I won't go through it in detail, but important because the sculptor who's making Bell Marcus Burgett was here, and Sculpture South and Venture South were both here, and they're the team backing the proposal around on the island to support the idea, the concept. The reason for drawing the meeting together was there was objection when it came to planning, and planning was withdrawn, and the objection was on safety grounds because the bell, it was thought, was located too closely to the rocks on the western edge of the bay. The planning team have accepted this, it's gone back, and they are now in the process of revising the planning application. So it's quite a brief update, I think. I'm pleased this is on record. It was interesting to read in the press and on white that the refusal planning application was on unsafe ground locally. Where they got that from, I do not know, but it did the rounds anyway, so at least it's on record. Officially, white was objected to. It was on the safe ground. The team are working to settle that aspect in particular. So a diagram will be produced in due course, hopefully within the next month, and we'll then need to revisit safety concerns, but that is really comes before the revised site location diagram. There will be consultation locally on the Esplanade as well, and there's one other aspect. The proposal was to donate £5,000 to Ventnor Town Council to support for the next 10 years any insurance and potential maintenance, although past experience around Britain that no maintenance long term has been required so far, and there's no reason to see why that would be, but the money is there should that happen. But there are 3 points there which will be fully updated in the future. When they're all in place, I can report back. So this is just an update.
Sure, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Phil. Does anybody have any questions for Phil at this point?
Where is it likely to be filmed? We don't know yet.
Still looking at the western end, but further in, further east away from the rocks. The thought was that youngsters could climb on the rocks and try and access the bell from the rocks, which would be dangerous. The other thought was that there are adverse riptides or currents that move east to west, and they do impact the rocks and then come round out again. So it's moving the site away from those.
Okay, thank you very much. That was for information only, nothing to vote on there. So item number 12, the Boundary Commission, the second consultation. Seems like this has been going on for quite a long time. As members are probably aware, the Isle of Wight has the largest constituency in the UK, significantly larger than any other, if I'm not mistaken, with around a little over 110,000 electors. That is being regularised across the United Kingdom to bring the constituencies between 69 and 77,000 electors. You don't need to be a maths genius to realise that the Isle of Wight doesn't divide that well. So we'll have a special exemption here, and the Isle of Wight will be divided into 2 constituencies of around about 55,000 electors each. As I understand, there has been a certain amount of toing and froing over the years this discussion has been going on, largely around whether or not East Cowes will be in the east or whether it will be in the west. Clearly there's an argument for both. Should it be in the west with cows, or should it be in the east, East Cowes? The implication for us is down here in Ventnor is that I do believe that to balance that population and to balance that question mark up there, Ventnor has at different times and different iterations of this consultation has popped between the two. There is a consultation, it is open, it is available at the moment, as noted on the report here. At the moment, we have a comment on there from Gary Peace arguing for Ventnor to be in the east. And we have a suggestion from our very own Councillor Ian Bond being broadly supportive of West placement. I'll come to my personal feelings in a second, but Ian, would you like to speak to this?
It's an interesting one, actually, and as you say, I think it's the 3rd time the Commission has looked at this, and the 2nd time under the current rules, the previous 2 reviews that were abandoned. And the last review came up with the proposal that Ventnor goes in with the east, and the current review has come up with the opposite proposal. And although you mentioned cows, I think it's worth noting that the legislation doesn't actually require the 2 Isle of Wight seats to be equal. So although there's a common assumption that it would be better if they're equal, it's not a legal requirement. So it would be possible for the Commission to come up with proposals for cows and Ventnor based on our own best solutions rather than one driving the other. As far as Ventnor is concerned, I mean, my concern about the east proposal, which I made to the Commission the last time around, was that essentially you have a seat that is right in the bay when you look at it. I mean, it's right shaped in Sandown, and it's going to be a ride in the bay seat. And Ventnor, it's like over the hill, it's been tacked on just to make up the numbers, and I'm not sure that would be in our interest as a town. You'd be splitting St Lawrence from Knighton and Whitwell and Wroxall from Godstow, which I don't think is a very good boundary. And I think Ventnor would struggle to get much attention from within such a seat from its MP. I mean, the MP is going to naturally look at Ryde and the Bay, which is about 10 or 11 wards altogether. And if they're not looking at Ryde and the Bay, they've got Wootton, they've got St Helens and Bembridge, they've got Brading. So I mean, you know, I don't see Ventnor really being seen as anything other than being tapped onto a seat like that. Whereas the alternative, which I'm recommending, or on my personal representations, which I made on a personal basis, is that Ventnor goes in with Newport on the west, and essentially you then have the St Boniface down, Wroxall down, you know, the big hill between here and Shanklin. There's a solid boundary. You know, villages like Knighton, Whitwell and Godstow, I think, look towards Ventnor for services, and I know the number of door owners and people come to Ventnor for shopping and using the park, so I think it's a more natural placement. And as far as the seats concerned, I mean, Newport is 4 wards, so Newport is big, but Newport doesn't dominate the West constituency. And if you were the MP for that constituency, you've got Newport, and after that you've got West Cowes, Ventnor and Totland. But I mean, they're all sort of equivalent. So I think as an MP, you couldn't just service Newport. You'd be interested in what's happening in the rest of the constituency, and we'd be I think we'd get more attention and more focus in a Western constituency rather than being lumped in with the Bay. And we don't have that many issues, to my mind, that you know, the Ryde and the Bay is a distinct set of issues. Ventnor's issues are slightly different. That's my personal view, anyway.
Does anybody else have any comments on this? Just so you know, I mean, as chair of this, we only have the recommendation to consider the response, so we don't necessarily need to make a response as a whole body. My preference would be that we don't arrive at a situation where 5 are saying east and 6 are saying west, and we send in any kind of response on that. My preference would be that if there's a clear feeling around the table, then we can send in a corporate response. Otherwise, I'd just like to, you know, it's very good that Ian's outlined the rationale for his position. Otherwise, I think my preference would be to encourage members to make their own personal submissions. I don't think it'd really be appropriate if we have a split council, or if people are not particularly infused in one direction or the other. Would anybody else like to speak on this subject?
Well, I was bored by the whole subject originally, and I couldn't see the advantage in any way, really, so I was prepared for it. But having heard Ian's rationale, which I think is very, very sound, I would plump for this being in the West, and I suggest we need to go around the table and see whether there's a major consensus in that direction. And that would enable us to make a firm statement if it's appropriate.
If it's appropriate, yeah. That is correct. Would anybody else like to chip in?
I'd certainly vote for the West. Yeah, it seems a logical.
I think, yeah, the strongest point to me probably is more to consider as well, I'm sure, but to keep St Lawrence together with Ventnor. We don't want those separated.
But they wouldn't be separated. The boundary would either be between St Lawrence and Knighton, or essentially between Ventnor and Shanklin.
Yeah, my preference is that if you start to think those closest that we would interact with, we tend to look west. And I think decisions made would tend to favour Ryde and the Bay and not reach Ventnor if we were in the east. Again, it always depends how strong voices that can represent the case, really, isn't it?
So we're semi-rural, aren't we, as a town, compared with you know, Shanklin, Sandown, Ryde, etc., which I think fits us more appropriately with the other towns in the West.
I mean, I must admit, I would come into that considerably undecided. I think whatever options we see here, we are in danger of being a kind of, you know, losing out in both directions. I tend to disagree that an MP wouldn't favour Newport. I think if you've got Newport in constituency, that's mean it's the county town. It's going to be very much a centre of consideration. But I mean, I do see the arguments for not being lumped in as the side, you know, to be the sort of little bit at the side of the Bay. You know, I just fear that we need a fairly strong voice in either direction, or we're in danger of being, you know, couldn't be left out whichever way it goes.
Steve?
I've listened carefully to what Ian said, and I think what Ian said is absolutely spot on in his analysis of it. And my own personal view is that what is on offer, I wouldn't have opted for either of those personally myself. I would draw the barriers completely and utterly differently. But this is what's on offer, and we have to make a decision on that. And I would suggest that the West is probably the most appropriate place for that to be.
Okay, well,
sorry, I back in 100% on it too.
well, there you go.
Give it a lot of thought.
Thus far, we've not heard anyone flying the flag for the Bay. My personal feelings is that I think it's a very good point that the idea that you have Newport as the county town and then the other three conurbations are somewhat equal in population. Perhaps that balances it. So I think that's a good point. I have the sense that the economic fortunes of Ventnor are probably more tied to Newport than they are to the Bay. But I might be wrong. I mean, I'm sure it could be either directions.
I think if it sounds like if we're going to make a submission and based on what people said, I would propose that we do. I think the three arguments we will put is the argument about the boundary, that we have a very clear boundary with Shanklin,
the geographical
biggest hill on the island. Effectively, I think the commonality of interest between Ventnor and St Lawrence and Bonchurch with the rural areas to the west, particularly Knighton, Whitwell, God's Hill, and then the fact that I think if we're in the east, we would be concerned that Ventnor would just be tapped on to make up the numbers and be in an area that doesn't share much commonality of interest with riding the Bay. I think those are the three arguments.
Okay, well, I wasn't sure that we were going to arrive at any sort of consensus on that because well, I just wasn't sure. Ian, would you like to? Ian has a proposal.
Well, I propose that we make a response to the proposal of the town clerk be asked to make a response to the boundary commission on behalf of the council, making those 3 points about the boundary, the links with the rural areas to the west, and the fact that our issues are different from riding the Bay.
And do we have a seconder? Councillor.
I just hope IWOG doesn't say something different.
I mean, Gary is essentially backing the Conservative Party proposal, and the political parties do carry some weight. So I wouldn't be surprised to find that. It depends what the other political parties think. I wouldn't be surprised to find that they go back to the original. But that doesn't.
The MP is strongly supportive of the West.
I didn't see a submission from him though. I searched.
That's right.
He didn't make it, but he might go to there's a public meeting in Portsmouth or Southampton, I think, coming up. He might go to that. But I just think the trouble with political parties is that they just make the decision on the politics and then come up with the arguments afterwards. And I think it's no surprise that Gary supported his party colleagues. Whether he thinks that's the best for the town or not, I have no idea. I haven't spoken to him about it.
Okay.
And we haven't seen him since May.
We have a proposal and a seconder. Show of hands. So, thank you very much. Thank you, Ian.
Last thing I heard from Gary was this leaflet promising to work with the town council.
No, I'm a kind of abstention on that one.
Abstention?
Yeah.
Okay.
Not particularly against it, but just completely undecided, I think.
That's a position I do understand on this topic. Thank you all very much. Town clerk's report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Quickly, for this, the household support funding is being well deployed at present, thanks to Alison primarily doing the admin for it. We, as you can see, have identified 120 local households needing that level of support, which is obviously of concern to members here. 337 vouchers have been supplied at the time of writing the report, and those are £25 each. I'm aware of that. And we've one more round of funding, one more round of vouchers to issue which Alison is organising this week. A brief reference to our monthly meeting with the Recreation and Public Spaces people. Really useful session for sorting out minor bits and things, and without having to argue through emails and policy statements, so that's really useful. The Mental Health Wellbeing Fund successful application for 3,600 to run an additional session of the Wellbeing Cafe from the 1st of April, which is very welcome indeed. A reference to the Living Well and Early Help project. This is much bigger than it looks, by the way. The initial discussions about the transfer of staff contains a list of 25 staff, not all of whom will be transferred, because for some of them their term of appointment ends on the 31st of March, but it will be a substantial 2p transfer to Aspire. But the basis of the application is, and I think the reason it's been successful, in spite of Age UK bidding to continue with the work, is the fact that it includes community-based organisations. Aspire are leading it. Tony McCarthy is involved as representing the Town Council. It also involves the West White Sports Centre, and PAN, of course, is involved too. So it's a really exciting project, starting from the 1st of April. The latest meeting of the South White Health and Wellbeing Forum went ahead really well, and you'll have noted that the new Chief Exec of the NH Trust was willing to come and speak to that meeting, which is really important, and a very good, successful meeting all around. The dates of the working groups for the record, the fact that the green room was used for a while as one of the identified collection points for items being donated towards the people of Ukraine. And finally, this gives me the opportunity both to report on the first session of the development programme and to remind members of the second, which is next Monday, when Terry from the Wellbeing Cafe and Jen Bennett will be here to talk with you, and would hope that the attendance will be stronger than last time. Mr. Mayor?
Thank you very much, David. The Living Well and Early Help project, has it already had 5 years? It's been running for 5 years. Okay. I'm not familiar with this one. I haven't heard of it.
Some would say that's because
Within a silo, perhaps. But no, it'd be very interesting to get a report on this when it's dispersed around in the. Okay.
I got a question. I think there's just a typo, David, because the Sustainability and Biodiversity Working Group next meeting can't be the 26th of March. That's a Saturday. I certainly won't be there. It'll be the 30th.
And the website meeting next on the 28th.
All right. Thank you all very much. That closes the meeting. Thank you, David.
Yeah,